Hello, in this video, we're gonna make a program for your programs. Yeah, that's right. But what the hell do I mean by that? So let's go back a little bit. Because of this YouTube channel and kind of my own needs just in my spare time, I've made a lot of pretty cool little programs that can do a lot of really cool things. And sometimes, if I need to create a PDF into an image or take all of the white pixels out of an image and make them transparent or convert a WebP file to a PNG, I'll just write a script to do it because then I can just kind of run that script. The issue with that is that as you make more and more scripts, you kind of just don't use them because they're not convenient to use. So in this video series, we're going to actually make a program that will run our programs. But the first thing we're going to do in this video is go over some of our options for how we can write config files for our program. But first off, what's a config file? So a config file is a type of file that just kind of holds data. Think of it like a simple database. Some of the most common config file types are JSON, YAML, and TOML, which are the three we're going to be looking at today. So in this video specifically, we're going to go over those three, how to use them with Python, how to read from them with Python, and how to write back to them in Python. And then in the next video, we're going to write a program that can run other programs, specifically scripts. And then in the video after that, we're going to integrate our configuration file handling into that program. And then finally, we're going to make it so that we have a handy little UI, kind of like we did in this video up here, where we made a little dock at the bottom. So if you hadn't checked that video out, definitely check that video out because it's kind of cool, pretty handy. But yeah, I think it's going to be way nicer to be able to use all of these tools rather than just kind of going online. Because I have them and you can have them too. They're very easy to make, all these random little tools. But let's get to it. So in this video, we are actually going to go over JSON, YAML, and TOML. And I have all of these imported with the pip commands that you need to run in order to install these. JSON just comes with Python, and the other two you need to install. I use TOML, not TOML kit, but another option. Usually you're not going to use multiple of these. You're just going to use a single one and kind of use that as your config. But I just wanted to show you all of them to just kind of see maybe you like the way one looks better or whatever. We'll see. All right, so let's start off. Let's just look at the configs that we're going to have, and maybe we'll add to them later. But just to start off, let's look at them. So JSON. So JSON is just an object. It's just a JavaScript object notation is what JSON stands for. And here we have an app. This is just the first object. If you've ever used JavaScript, this is literally a JavaScript object. So you would do the object.name or .app and then .name, and then it would return your helper. And in this case, we then have applications, which is an array or a list. And then this contains two objects, which both contain names, input type, and path. And then I just have this other one called test with a cool equals true because, well, you'll see in a sec. So this is what JSON looks like. So we have the exact same configuration configured in YAML. And in YAML, it's a little bit different. There's a lot less squiggly brackets and whatnot. So honestly, I kind of like YAML a little bit more already. But here we have an app with a name called helper and applications. And instead of having it as an array, you can just specify with these little dashes that this is a new version of the application. And then this is another version. So now basically anything after this line and before this line is a part of one object. So this is one version of the application and this is another version of the application. And then finally, we have our other thing down here just with the test of cool. So this is how you do a lists or arrays. Now let's look at TOML. TOML, you kind of define what your kind of header is here, just like within app within YAML there. And then you have the name as the helper. It's all kind of in line, right? It's all like one block. if you have these two brackets here, it actually means that it's a repeatable thing. So in this case, we're saying that applications, there's going to be multiple of them. And here we have each of them implemented here, or written, I guess, here. And one thing that was kind of unique with TOML is that you can actually do this applications.test. And this means that even though applications is a list, you can then do the list.test and it can return some information, which you can't do with YAML and you can't do with JSON. So if that's something that is kind of cool, then there you go. You can do it. It was kind of unique to TOML that I saw at least. So yeah, kind of neat. All right, so these are our configs, but how do we read from them? How do we do anything? Well, let's whip up a really fast program to do that. All right, so to start off, I'm going to create a data class, and we're going to call it application. Application, and a data class is just a really simple version of a class where you don't have to actually implement anything. So we're going to have the name, which is a string. We're going to have the input type, which is a string, right? And the path, which is a string. And that's it. That's our data class. If you want to learn more about classes, you can check out this series I have up here. Here. I guess I'm in a circle right now. Oh, up at the top. All right. Now we're also going to create a class called config. And this is going to be our actual class that is going to kind of handle importing and saving the configs. So first off, we're going to do def init, and this is just to initialize the config. And here we're going to take in a target file. And in this case, I'm going to say is YAML equals false, is JSON equals false, and is TOML equals false. Again, I'm just doing this so that I can kind of reuse the same thing for everything. If you are just kind of using one of these, you probably just need target file. You don't need any of this stuff, but just so you know. All right, I'm going to go ahead and actually paste some of this stuff in and I'll go over it. Cool. So applications is an array, sorry. Okay, great. So what do we have here? So first off, we're setting a file attribute within the class the config class, and we're setting it to the target file that we've passed. Then we're setting the list of applications to an empty list. And then we're just kind of copying over all these is YAML, is TOML, is JSON. The reason we're doing this is so that we can kind of run all of them really easily. And I'll kind of show you what that looks like just in a second. But first thing first, if it's YAML, we're going to load the YAML configs. And if it's TOML, we're going to load the TOML configs and load the JSON configs. But you might notice we don't have those things. So let's go ahead and implement those. So let's do the YAML configs first. YAML configs. And remember, if it's a class, it will have self as a parameter. So it's super simple to do this. All we need to do is with open self.file and we actually want to read it, read only. If you don't actually specify this, you can do more, I believe. But we're just going to do this, and we're just going to call it as file. Now, at this point, we have now read the file, or we're kind of reading the file. So now we're going to do self.config equals YAML.safe_load. You can see all of our options there, and we're just going to pass in the file. Now, this is going to load in the file into effectively a dictionary, a Python dictionary, which I also have a video for up above. And when it does that, it will be assigned to the config. So then we can kind of reference it throughout here. And let's go ahead and do print self.config. So at this point, we can kind of actually do some stuff. So let's comment these out for a second. And let's go ahead and implement this so we can run this, and you can see that we actually get something when we print the self-config. So we're going to go ahead and do config YAML is YAML equals true. And when we go ahead and run this, we will get to see, let me just open this up a bit more. And are we in the right? Yep, we are here. We're going to do Python 3, and then we're going to do config.py. And you can see when we ran this, we hit down to this self-config, and we got this entire config printed out. Pretty great. so far so good. So let's go ahead and implement the other two. So if it's TOML or if it's JSON, how do we import those? Well, basically the same way. Not exactly the same, obviously, because we're using YAML here. But let's go ahead and just kind of copy these over because they're almost the same. So in order to do TOML, all you do is just do toml.load. And there you go, all done. And if you want to do JSON, you just do json.load. Yeah, that's it. So now they'll all work. And just to kind of prove that, we can go ahead and do JSON is JSON equal true, is TOML equal true. Change this to TOML. And then let's comment out the TOML, and we'll go ahead and run this again. And there you go. We can see that we did get our values just the same. And if we go ahead and comment this out and run this, we can see we also get our values. Just the exact same, just as a dictionary, everything works the same. So that's pretty neat, I think at least. I think that's pretty neat. You'll also notice actually here this cool is like, or sorry, this test cool true thing is like kind of within applications, but not really. It's kind of weird, to be honest. It's applications, and then it has a value within here. I don't know. It's kind of weird. I don't know if I like it that much, to be honest. It seems broken, but it works. All right, great. So let's just go ahead. I'm just going to do YAML for now, just because, I don't know, I've got to implement something next. So we have everything now set within our config. But once we have that, what are we going to do next, right? If we run this, we have our config set, but we don't actually have anything else populated. So it's not really useful yet. So I'm going to paste in a new function here called parse configs. And what this will do is it will make sure that the applications are set to an empty list, just in case. And then it will get the name and set the name to our config to the app name of the dictionary. And obviously, if the config doesn't have an app name, this will cause an error. But we want to trust that it does. And if it doesn't, then it probably should throw an error. So that's actually a good thing. And then for app in self-config applications, so for the list of this config applications, which we could see down here, we are going to add a new application to each of these. And this application, again, is just our data class that we wrote up here. And this is going to set the name, the input type, and the path. And that's it. So let's go ahead and the kind of nice thing about doing it this way is because now I can just, no matter what, just do config, parse configs, and there you go, it's done. And if we wanted to do like print config dot applications, we can do that. So there we go, and let's run this. And here we go. Here's our application that we have here. So that's what this config applications is, just this right here. Pretty neat. All right, so we have all of our configs now parsed within this config file. Just to make it a little bit nicer to actually print this, we can just do this print config. But even a cooler way of doing this is that if we do __str___, it means that if we try and print config as though it's a string, it will actually call this function. And it will return stuff. So we can just do return or to return equals this, and then we'll do a new line at the end of that, and then we'll do to return plus equals this, and then return to return. And now if we actually just do print config, we should get this here. So we got the name helper and all the applications. Again, pretty sweet. All right. Now, before we actually go to writing back to the configs, because we're going to do that just next, it's kind of boring if we do that because we haven't actually changed anything. So let's go ahead and make it so we can change something. So right down here after add configs, we're going to paste in a new little simple function called add application. And here we're going to pass in the name, input type, and path, and we're simply just going to append a new application to that applications list. Pretty simple. So we can kind of verify that again by doing config.addApplication, and we'll give it our name. We'll do hi YouTube, an input type. We'll do a file, and a path. We'll do C cool. Perfect. Awesome. Now, if we go ahead and run this, we can see that we do have our application with our name of hi YouTube, input type of file, and our path of C cool. All right, so let's now add a way to write back to our configs. Honestly, you don't really need to do this. I think being able to know that you can or have the option to is still handy. Like, why not? But you don't actually need to. Writing to the config is like, usually you're not going to do in like a big, program, or if you have a huge program, you're going to have a config that you read from. It's static. You're not going to change it. But, knowing that you can is kind of handy. And my dog's barking. All right. So let's say we want to update our configs. Config, and we're going to pass self because it's a function. And we're going to do applications equals empty list. All right. Now you'll notice that applications here is a different color, but it's actually because we're not referencing self applications. So this is an applications list that is just scoped to this specific function here. So it's just empty, but making it empty isn't setting the applications for the whole config class to also be empty. Just in case that was confusing. You can name it something different if you're scared about doing that too. That's not a bad idea, to be honest. So now we want to create a dictionary representation of the config. And the reason for that is because all of these libraries use a dictionary to be able to write it back to the file. So let's just do that. So we're going to do for app in self.applications, we're going to do applications.append, and then we're just going to do a simple little object here. So we're going to do name is app.name, input type, is app.input type, and finally path is app.path. Awesome. So after this, we will now have a list of all of our applications. So we need to make actually another dictionary because now we have a list of dictionaries. So we're going to do config, which again is referencing nothing so far because it's not the self.config. We're going to do config equals a dictionary, and we're going to say app dictionary name is self.name, right? Because we have already set that during our parse configs. Then we're going to do applications, and then we're going to pass in our applications that we set here. And then we can set in the test of cool true. Honestly, I don't know. Sorry, true. I don't really know why I have this set here at all, but whatever. All right, so I'm also going to paste in just this here because we want to have a single function that's going to do everything. So we're going to have a check for if it's YAML, we're going to write to YAML. If it's TOML, write to TOML. If it's JSON, write to JSON. So perfect. So let's go ahead and implement these. So we're going to do def write to YAML and self and config. So in order to do this, we're going to do with open self.file, and we're going to have a W here, which stands for write, and then we're going to do as file. So specifically when we do this, the file is only available within the block under this open. So if I did like print file, and then I did print file, it's not available here. It's only available here. Just so you know that that's what's going on here. Now all we want to do is just do YAML.dump, kind of funny, config and file. And that's it. We're going to basically dump whatever the config is here, which is just our dictionary, and we're going to put it into the file. Pretty good. So we're going to go ahead and copy these and just do that so that we have a simple kind of setup here for copying these over for TOML and JSON. Now we obviously need to change some things here, but we don't need to change much. In order to support this for TOML, we just change this to TOML. Pretty simple. And for JSON, we need to do JSON, but we also need to do indent equals 4. don't have to do this, but this is just specifying at what level do you want indentations to be, because if you looked at the JSON, it's kind of, well, it's indented, in this case, 4 spaces. So that's what that's all about. All right, cool. So this works now. Now, if we wanted to go ahead and actually write this config, we can just do config.update config, and it will go ahead and write it. So before I do that, let me clear my terminal. And let's see, we're doing YAML first. So one thing I will say is that when you do write to your config, it's going to overwrite everything with whatever you're writing to it, because it's basically creating the file from scratch. But it's also going to reorder things. So it's going to still be in the same structure overall. It can still read it and still work the exact same, but it's going to reorder things. So like, I think it makes these alphabetical. So you'll just see here. So if we go ahead and run this, well, there you go. Now it's been remade, right? So if we go back and forth, this is actually what it looks like. You can see it did add our other type here of hi YouTube and C cool and with the input type of file, but it's not nearly as nice. It actually makes the strings and makes them just not strings. I get, oh, technically they're still strings because that's just how it works in YAML. So maybe that's just my bad in terms of how I implemented this YAML to start, but it works either way. So yeah, so that's something to be aware of, but hey, it still works. So we're gonna go back to our old way of doing it. And let's just kind of change this to JSON and run it again. So we're gonna go over to our JSON file. We're going to run, and there you go. This actually didn't change that much. We basically just added in our hi YouTube. So if you don't really want assuming you format your JSON like I have, then it will probably be almost the exact same if you write to it, which is kind of handy. Actually, maybe mine was like way less pretty. Hold on. Okay, mine was a little bit less pretty, but whatever. It's almost the same. All right, let's go ahead and do TOML and see what this looks like. So when we run TOML, or the config, and we're updating our config, you can see this is what we get here. So this one is like probably my least favorite. I think within YAML, I don't know for sure if this is how it works, but I think it at least respects the order of the dictionary. Whereas in TOML, it does not do that. It puts all of the list of applications first, and then it put the app, and then it put the test. Whereas within YAML, when we updated it, it still had app at the top, and then applications, and then test, which is the order that we have our actual thing here. I wonder if we switch this, if that will be different within the YAML. Let's take a look. Let's do this. Let's go back to our previous version, and let's run this. Oh, it doesn't. I don't know why. Maybe just the way that the way that they determine like alphabetical orderness or something like that. It doesn't care, or it does it differently between YAML and TOML. I don't know, but I kind of honestly I think I prefer YAML the most. TOML's maybe a close second. Honestly, I haven't heard of TOML that much before researching some stuff for this video, and somebody commented, shout out. Yeah, I think YAML is kind of the nicest. I think it looks really clean. TOML is also pretty darn clean. And JSON, there's a special place in my heart for JSON because I've used it so much. But man, it looks so old if you compare these two, It just does not look nearly as pretty. And honestly, you might think like, well, pretty it's not important, but hey, if you're going to look at it a lot, it's a little bit helpful. So yeah. So leave a comment down below. What is your favorite type? Do you like JSON, YAML, TOML? What do you like? Also, what app or program do you think would be most useful to include in our program for programs? Because, I have a bunch of them already, but like, I don't know. What would you put in it? Please leave a comment. It also helps out the channel. So even just leave a smiley face or something like that. That'd be sweet. All right. So that's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed. In the next video, we're going to write our program that will run programs. And should be a lot of fun. So until next time, remember, I'm Jake. You're awesome. And this has been Python config types, I guess. Whatever. Cheers.